Despite a 4-8 record in 2023 and a bottom-feeding defense that gave up over 470 yards a game, EA has decided that Colorado deserves the 16th best overall rating in college football. So today, I'm going to get ahead of the curve, and before this team is too good, we're going to rebuild them. The goal today is to win a national title, and since this is probably the last time that I'll likely ever play NCAA football 2014, there are going to be no recruiting restrictions or time limits. The difficulty is Heisman, and I like the format where I can only hop into 3 user games per regular season. In my opinion, that really forces you to build a roster that will do well in sims, but it does give you enough control where you can just jump into really important games and get the win if you need to. Now you can see from the history that it's been since 2005 since this game has even sniffed a bowl, so let's see how the recruiting board looks. I have heavy needs at quarterback and middle linebacker, and it looks like it's all 3-stars interested. I'm going to pick the majority of the class here, and I'm going to get a pile of 3-star hogs up front and get that line going for the future. That's one of my biggest priorities. Now with needs out of the way, I always like to just sort by 40 times and just try my luck with the fastest recruits in the country, and Byron Robertson is on the radar today. Now at the end of the day, I have a few standout prospects to maybe boost the program, like quarterback Brandon Davis. Got a few 4-stars, and the rest of the class is just interested lower caliber recruits, and after I trim off the fat, we can go to redshirting. Now as a rebuild of a lower tier school, redshirting players, it's going to be heavy. Basically, if they can be redshirted, they will, because the future is my ultimate goal. For the schedule, the Pac-12 is pretty stacked, and my only rule here is that I don't want to play FCS schools, so I replace them with James Madison, and hopefully that'll still be an easy win. The Buffs do start the season ranked 99th overall, which isn't ideal, but I guess it could be worse, and I'm going to jump into the very first game of the season against our in-state rivals, Colorado State. I'm going to use this first game to talk about my offense, my philosophy, my play style, and generally how I like to just go about the game. Now I'm mostly going to show highlights to get a feel, but I'm a big fan of like the run and shoot offense. Think June Jones at Hawaii or Mouse Davis. Utilizing option routes is just a really fun idea. And when a receiver, think about it this way, when a receiver has 3 routes into one, I personally feel like it makes it hard for the defense to cheat. And you guys, we all know the computer cheats a lot. Now the shotgun spread or the shotgun trips formation, they have plays with up to 3 option routes. And I do like to utilize RPOs and quick screen audibles if the defense is lined up correctly, or they're doing something like playing really far off of our receivers. Basically, I just like to sling the ball, and I think I'm going to do that about 75% of the time, but all of this is grounded in realism. I like to read the defense pre-snap. I like to use plays to beat certain zones if I read it, or if I see man-to-man, I have plays for that, rather than just using like a money play or using a play just because it exploits the AI. And I think overall, I think that's a pretty boring way to play, but that's just my opinion on the matter. That's just how I play. I just want to bring this up just so you know my mindset going forward. Overall, the first game was pretty easy. It's one of the few games I think I'll have like a big advantage, and I guess it's a little late, but let me just say a couple of other things. I'm using the 2022 rosters for College Football Revamped because I can't be bothered to update it with just a few days before the new game releases. And even though I cherry picked a lot of plays that made Stroud look pretty decent, just know this, he still struggled a lot. He's only like 75 overall, and he finishes this game with like 60% completion. It's not awful. I threw several interceptions, and most of that is on me being rusty as a player, but just for immersion's sake, let's pretend it's because I have a subpar roster and we're just getting used to a brand new system. I kicked a ton of field goals in this game. My red zone offense is atrocious because once the field shrinks and I can't spread the field like I want, it just gets really hard for me. But after a 23-0 lead, I sim the rest and I end up getting a 58-7 win, and that's a huge win. And Stroud even threw for nearly 500 yards, and you might be scoffing saying, hey, this might be too easy, but as Lee Corso says, not so fast, my friends. Recruiting is pretty standard here. I'm going pretty heavy on about 7 recruits, pretty much the standard NCAA 14 meta. And then the rest of them, I'm putting just enough points to where they'll stay interested in case something else doesn't work out. But there's that weird quirk with the NCAA 14 where in week 2, you can just find a ton of players that no one's going after. Now generally, they're going to be a lot of halfbacks and quarterbacks and athletes, but I do find 3 prospects here. Jeremy Breedlove is a 5-star athlete that I really like. I find a 4-star receiver, and then I get another quarterback just in case the others kind of fall through the cracks, because it goes without saying that having a quarterback for the future, it's going to be the linchpin and just the glue that's going to hold this offense together when things eventually start clicking. Now, fellas, if you're like me, you're coming off of this first game, you're putting up video game-like numbers, 58 points. You might think, hey, this rebuild is smooth sailing, and with James Madison up next, that should be an easy 2-0 start to the season, but here's where things start to go off the rails a little bit. I lose this game and see him 29-26. Now, never mind, this is one of the very few games I have left that I should have the advantage on, but if you look at the box score, it's just the way that they had 4 turnovers, and they still managed to score a late touchdown to beat us. But let's just hope that this is an anomaly. It's not the usual outcome for us. But it is starting to look like a trend, because next week, Fresno State, they took us out back. They beat us by over 3 touchdowns, and in the blink of an eye, we're 1-2 already. Now, I'm not going to say the season's over, but for me, it's looking like the high point is going to be stacking all of my recruits to visit for the Arizona game coming up in a bit. Now, no one expects to have a top-tier season in year 1, and even if I expected to have a few easy wins, things just, they rarely work out the way you want them to, but we just got to keep our heads up. If we look at things realistically, the smartest thing to do early in a rebuild is to jump into games that I think I can win. I know it's early in the year, but let's just take a look at the schedule. Cal is the one single team with a losing record left on our schedule. Now, I'm sure this will change over time. It's really early, but there is real potential for a nice, solid 2-10 finish on our first year unless I can pull out some more wins. Now, Arizona is my big recruiting game, so I'll definitely go into that one to play it. And I guess the other one, I'll just play it by ear. Oregon State throttles us next week 37-21. It's not really a surprising outcome. They were just the better team on paper, but we're going to talk about my biggest liability right now. When you have a C-tier quarterback like Stroud at the helm of the offense, in a situation where the defense is at least, pretty good, he puts up numbers like this. Just take this in, soak it in, just look at this. 12 of 42 passing, 163 yards, 1-3 touchdown to interception ratio. Now, the sad reality is that I have no one else to go with at this point, and I have to ride it out, but this is not the kind of production that you want to see out of a player that you are trusting to throw the ball up to 50 times a game. To make things even better, we have number 7 Oregon next. I don't need to drag this one out. We get beat pretty handily, 30-14. I think even if I was doing well, I would expect to lose this one. Arizona State is next, and this is a game I'm going to jump into. They are better than us on paper, just a little bit though. And I do think that I can actually win this game, and every little win's going to help here early in the rebuild. So on a play like this, Stroud starts to look like Dan Marino. Just look at him. He's feeling the pressure. He's rolling out, buying time. He's setting his feet, still keeping his eyes downfield, and he's lobbing it to the open guy. And if you squint your eyes, you can start to maybe see some potential in the team. But then a few plays later, bad decision making in the tightest of coverage will lead to an early pick. So it's pretty frustrating. Now, I get bailed out when they missed a field goal. But look at this play right here. The pocket is collapsing. I roll out, and for some reason, I think it's a bright idea to not only throw on the run, dead sprint, I also throw off my back foot, and just to add to the trifecta here, I throw it all the way across the field. I can't even see what's going on, and that equation is only going to add up to one thing, another bad interception. And look no further than plays like this as to why I'm about to go 1-5. Here's a good one. Let's look at this one. I'm driving. I'm only down 7 despite those awful plays, and I complete a pass over the middle to Russell, and he gets some fortunate missed tackles, and he's kind of breaking free, getting a really nice game. But guys, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I forgot how to hurdle, and in this moment, I thought it was the Y button. Y is the jump button, and Murphy's Law is in full effect here. I get hit mid-jump, I fumble the ball, they recover, and that just halts any sort of momentum that I could even hope to gain at this point. So I'm actually going to skip all the way to the 4th. It's actually a 3-point game despite everything that's went wrong, and this hurts. My line can't last, so I roll out, and if you look really carefully at this play, maybe I'll slow it down for you guys, I have B breaking wide open, but Stroud says, hey, 3 interceptions, that's not good enough. Let's heave it as deep as I can for the 4th interception of the game, and this is the one that's going to seal the deal. So there's no two ways about it. I played awful, I made a lot of bad decisions, and I'm sure that it's not going to be the last time I make bad plays, but it was still a close game despite all of that, and I can at least take that as some sort of silver lining going forward. Arizona is another winnable game, and what I'm about to say is not hyperbole. This is the single most important game of the season because I have every single one of my potential recruiting class packed into a single plane coming straight to this game. This is my Super Bowl, and if I can play well, the tides could very well start to turn in this rebuild. Early in the game, I'm driving. The read option picking up some pretty solid yardage, and the stick routes, they're catching the voids in the zone left by the defense, and I'm feeling pretty good, but I have to remind you that we are 1-5 for a reason, because despite stringing together this really methodical, nice drive, I fall for the oldest trick in the book. The old invisible linebacker play where the quarterback just doesn't even see him and he just gift wraps him an interception, and it ruins my offensive flow. Now picking up in the second quarter, it's a 3-3 game, and here it's 4th and 1. Now it's a weird area where I would rather go for it than try to kick a field goal, and I'm gonna convert, but I would like to talk about one of my favorite reads and audibles that I like to utilize in this game that I hopefully can take to the next game. If I ever come out in a play and the defense looks like maybe it's playing zone, or maybe the outside DBs are just playing really far back, I love this RPO screen pass. The idea is that I can do a quick throw and maybe use the other wide out as a blocker, and I can just get it to my playmakers in space on a 1v1 situation. Maybe he can make a play, break it to the house. So here it works like a charm. I get 13 yards, and I never get tired of that feeling when you make a read on a defense, it's correct, and you just complete it exactly how you thought it up in your head. It just feels really good. Now I don't even score a touchdown here. I go ahead with a field goal on that drive, and once again, I want to touch on that concept. Arizona loves playing off the ball, and I love this RPO screen. I can't say it enough. I'm not going to talk about it the whole video, but when it comes up, I'm going to show it. Now I think that Madden 24 has a version of this play that has the read option instead of just a run play, and I would love to have that to use it. I couldn't find it in NCAA 14, but I hope it is in the new game because that would be a great play. But it's just really effective against certain coverages. I think you all should pick that up and use it a little bit. And you would think that I would be on the fast track to maybe put this game away with diving catches like this from Russell, but once again, the drive stalls. I play it safe, I kick another field goal. Now, I haven't talked much about this, but my line is really bad. I get sacked a lot. Here, I slide back in the pocket. I'm fighting for my life here. I barely avoid getting gangbanged by the whole defensive line, and I throw a laser right to my receiver. Perfect play, but he drops it. So even sometimes when you play good and make the right read, the rest of your team just lets you down, and that leads to just another field goal. So late in the third, it's actually just a 12-10 game. I get a solid pass on third down, and it's just short of the marker. Now hindsight is 20/20, but in this moment, if I made the fourth down, I would kill more clock and I would potentially put the game out of reach, but I get stuffed on the read option keeper. And at this point, I keep leaving the door for Arizona to come back at this point. So on the next drive, it's third down. My defense did its job. It forced the fourth down, but they do get a field goal and they actually take the lead. Jumping ahead to the fourth, Snead makes a sweet read on this option route. He uses the curl. He beats the defender that was backpedaling, and then he goes ahead, he fights through the tackle, and he takes it all the way down inside the 10. That's exactly the play that we needed. And even though I'm a gunslinger and I want all the passes, I want all the stats, I make the smart play here. I settle down. I keep it on the ground a couple of times. I let my halfback do what I wasn't able to do all game with all these field goals, and I actually score inside the red zone to take a fourth quarter lead. I also get the 2-point conversion by finding the tight end in the zone, and after forcing a punt on the next drive, I go full ball control, and this first down right here is going to seal the victory for me. And finally, I picked up the second win of the season, and it was a pretty big one. And if you want to know anything about this team, our field goal kicker won player of the game, and that's just kind of like the state of Colorado football right now. It is what it is. So that win gave us 6 recruits signing after the visit. The week before I didn't show it, but I got 2 more recruits that signed. So I'm having a lot of success in the recruiting trail, but that's about the only high point of this season. I'm going to end up losing by UCLA by 10 the next week, but in a shocker, 5-star athlete Jeremy Breedlove decided to sign. Now he's listed on here as QB on this screen, but he is an athlete. But I want you guys to remember this name, Jeremy Breedlove. He might make an appearance way later in the video. Now let's go over some rapid fire just to finish up this season. Washington beats us, a blowout cow actually. USC wins by 3 scores, and I close out the season losing to number 11 Utah. And let's talk about maybe the wider world outside of Colorado just to get a feel of how this season went for everybody else. Ohio State's halfback took home the Heisman, and here's the playoff picture and how things went down for year 1. Miami and Ohio State are the only two undefeated teams in the nation, and they're seemingly on a collision course. But here, we do see that there were 4 Pac-12 teams in the playoffs, and I played every single one of them just to give some validity to how tough my schedule was. At the end of it all, the two undefeateds did emerge, and they played each other. It was a 2002 national title game rematch where Miami ended up spanking Ohio State. They go 16-0, and they win the first national title of this rebuild. I ended up going 3-9. I was ranked 113th in the nation, and sadly, I did lose a prestige star, but look at this 4-year outlook here. It's not that bad, all things considered. Look at year 4, like we're ranked in the mid-30s. Stroud finished 9th in the country in passing. He broke even in touchdown to interception ratio, but the two things that stood out to me are not great. 47% overall completion percentage, that's just not going to cut it by any team. And I did get sacked 42 times, which led the nation. So if you say anything else about my team, look at it, you say anything you want about this 3-9 team, I did lead the nation in at least one category. No one gets sacked more than me. The bright spot for me, I think, was the receiving core. Now the numbers, they're not crazy, but a lot of these guys are young and they're going to stick around for basically the whole rebuild, so that's pretty exciting. And look at this, guys. Colorado, let me read this. Colorado was so impressed by the job that I've done, they've offered me an extension. And I'm not going to question it because that means I get to keep my talent tree, my recruiting talents, and that's a godsend. I did not expect to have my talents left over, and we can just go straight into year 2 now. And the problem's going to start up front here. Players leaving. We have a massive 25 seniors graduating, including 2 of my top wideouts, an 87 overall tight end, and just in general, some really good, solid starters are leaving at every position. Now, I've gotten everything that I've wanted so far in recruiting, so the last piece that I really want is JUCO linebacker Wallace Fields. In general, I'm hurting at linebacker, so that's kind of where most of my points are going to go, but I still do put just a little points in the other lower rated recruits, just in case they still want to come. And I end up adding to an already pretty stacked class. Fields will likely start immediately, and with 3 linebackers, I'm hoping that'll just bolster that position for years to come. I end up getting the 24th overall class, and that is beyond what I was thinking, but in my opinion, I think the class is even better than that because we didn't sign a ton of recruits, we didn't max out with 25, and there's just a lot of raw talent in there. In the quarterback room, things are tight if you look at it right now. 3-star gem Matt Burgess looks primed to play early, but the overalls here are really close. And remember, we still have 5-star athlete Jeremy Breedlove. He is a 79 overall true freshman, and he's got 90 speed, so I do have some decisions to make. This year in recruiting, there's a lot of 4-stars interested, and since I don't have a ton of needs, I'm just going to go after a lot of luxury. This year's class has 2 guys that run a 4.2 40, and I would love to have them, even if I just get one, so I got to go after both. They're probably going to be my main focus along with some of these other really good 4-star studs. During the offseason, Carter put in a ton of work, and he actually ended up being my highest rated quarterback going into the season. Now I know if you look at it, there's a lot of merits to tossing in a freshman like Breedlove into the mix just to learn and get better and improve, but with a 3-9 start last season, I feel like redshirting him for the future and letting Carter just take his lumps and just bridge the gap over the next couple of years is the correct play. I also didn't talk about my favorite pick last season, I just glossed over it. 4-star Byron Robertson. Now he was the fastest guy in the nation last year. I ended up signing him. He comes in at 96 speed, but as usual, high speed usually comes at the cost of being a little bit lower overall. He's 5th on our depth chart at running back, and just like with Breedlove, I think the decision to redshirt him is just based off of the future success of the team, and overall, the consensus is that I'm going to redshirt everyone just in the hopes that I can make a run in like 2 or 3 years. The overalls of the recruits are really, really good here, but remember, Mark Bratton and Andy Boyd, they have 4.2 speed. I'll keep you updated on them as the season progresses, and we'll see how that goes. This season, I am starting off 97th overall, which is a very, very slight improvement over last year. And when you look at this schedule compared with our current ranking, current rating, I don't think a Pac-12 title is going to be coming this year, guys. I hate to say it. 5 teams are ranked on this schedule, and look at this gauntlet at the end of the year with 4 ranked teams in a row, with 3 of them being in the top 8. So just like last year, my focus is going to be mainly just winning 3 user games to get easy wins, and that means, once again, I'm going to try to get some confidence at Colorado State in game 1. Going into this one, I'm going to hop into the second quarter. I've already thrown 2 picks. Don't sound the alarm yet. Don't get too worried yet, but 2 picks have already been thrown. But right now, I'm having success passing, and on this drive, I do miss a pretty good throw that I could have made. I miss it, and we force a field goal. I would say that neither team is really playing that well in this game so far, but with the half winding down, I do finally correctly read the blitz. My tight end Olsen is covered by a linebacker. He's able to get over the top, and I get a pretty huge gain. And finally, on 3rd and goal, I'm able to find Tyson for the go-ahead touchdown. Now from this point, I start to get a little confidence in me. I'm making some good reads. I'm taking what the defense is giving me, and in a rare moment of clarity in this rebuild so far, I'm actually going to be running the ball a few times because it's just so important. When the defense is giving you 5-man fronts or easy looks for runs, you just have to do it. And after driving down the length of the field, Hestera breaks free on the right side, and he makes for an easy pitch and catch to give us a 10-point lead. So in the 4th, it's actually 24-13. They have a shot to make it a pretty close game if they scored a touchdown or even a field goal, but they decide to go for it on 4th and 10, and they call that patented 4th down halfback screen that the computer loves to run, and that allows me to get a sack that ultimately is going to decide this game. I end up winning this one 27-13, and while it wasn't as flashy as last year's start, it felt like I just played really sloppy at times, but I was able to string together some promising drives to hopefully give us some confidence in future games. Carter's performance in his debut was enough to win, but 50% completion percentage and 3 interceptions. Hopefully it's not a trend. Hopefully I can break away from this. The next pick is Georgia Southern, and in year 2, any win counts for me, so this will be my 2nd user game already. Now in hindsight, I think maybe winning conference games might have been better, but I just want to start 2-0, I'll be honest, brother. Early in the 1st, I'm driving. I get some first downs, but just like that, I make a bad play on 3rd down, and it's yet another early interception to put us in a bad spot. Now my defense decides to step up, and on the next drive on 3rd down, I get a coverage sack. And let me just say that generally I'm going to sim through special teams. Extra points, kickoffs, punts, you know. But here, sim actually gives me a punt return for a touchdown, and it really caught me off guard, so I had to go back and look at it. But yeah, we're up 7-0 now due to the defense taking care of business and our special teams actually stepping up. At the end of the 1st, it's 3rd and 10. I make a play, but it ends up being 4th and inches, so close to the goal line. And my mentality here is that if I go for it and I score a touchdown, I can already put this game close to being out of reach. So that's what I do. I end up audibling to my RPO wide receiver screen, and since they had an outside receiver blanketed, I just ran it, and that gives us a nice 2-touchdown lead. And I'll highlight some good plays here. Hestera does go up in front of the defender to get a touchdown here to extend our lead back to 2 touchdowns near the end of the 1st half. And I'm even able to drive down after a really quick 3-and-out after that to tack on another field goal to go into halftime up 24-7. But there was a lot of problems with this game, so let's talk about it. Now, it was mainly turnovers. You already know turnovers are a big issue with me. And at times, there's this clear vision of the execution that could be there and the promise that this team could have. But then there are also a ton of times where I'm reminded that I just don't have elite athletes. And when you're asking somebody like Carter to throw it into these really tight windows, it just leads to what you see today. Now in total, get ready for this number, sit down maybe. I threw 5 interceptions this game, which ultimately it led to what should have been a huge blowout win to only being a 9-point game in the 4th quarter. Now I'm gonna add on a meaningless field goal at the end for just the bad manners because I was frustrated. But at the end of the day, I think I would rather be frustrated and still win the game than be 0-2 right now. But that still doesn't change the fact that I'm throwing 4 interceptions a game right now. I'm on pace to throw 48 interceptions. Someone please help me. Next week, we do have Hawaii coming up. They're 0-2. We look better on paper, and Sim does us a solid. We win 35-13, so we are off to a really hot 3-0 start, which means that we might see a bowl game this year. The recruiting trail is going pretty good. It's looking like our visit this year, our last user game will end up being Cal. We're just going to stack all our visits going to Cal, so we'll see how that goes, but it looks like that'll be our 3rd and final user game this year. And on the next week, we have Arizona State coming up. On paper, they don't look that much better, so maybe it can be a close game. And I guess reality had to come crashing down at some point because we lose this one 41-10 at home. Doesn't feel great, but we knew we had to lose at some point. We weren't going to go undefeated or anything like that. It is what it is. Next up, we have number 11 UCLA. I don't expect to win this one. They look a lot better than us, and just kind of like I expected, 49-24, another home loss, and we're quickly falling down. We're back down to 3-2. 2 after that hot start. Let's see if maybe we can right the ship somehow. Maybe Sim can throw us a ball and we'll see what happens. That's exactly what we're going to do next week. Washington State was very even with us in the rating, so I was hoping to at least maybe pull off the win here. But what we get is something a little bit better than that. We almost doubled their score, 39-20 win on the road. So we're 4-2. We're still on the right track. Maybe we can hit that bowl game. But remember, I talked about the schedule at the start of the season. Things are going to get pretty rough pretty fast very, very soon. The following week, Arizona blows us out 42-7. They absolutely bend us over and do whatever they want with us. That puts us at 4-3 on the season. And I'm starting to get worried, especially with how stacked the rest of the year is going to be. Maybe I can win the last user game. But outside of that, I don't know if there's any more winnable games. We need 2 more wins to get a bowl. I don't know if we can do it. Now we got a huge game with Cal. Just like last year with Arizona, this is our huge recruiting game. Every single recruit coming to this game, but Cal is a 90 overall team. They are much better than us on paper, so maybe I didn't think this one through as good as I thought, but I mean, let's just give it our best shot. Hopefully we don't throw a lot of early interceptions. That'd be crazy, right? And I've already talked about the RPO screen pass. Right here, it looks like it's perfect for the audible. I go to it, and I think for the only time in this rebuild, it gets read like a book, and I throw an early pick after driving a little bit, and that's not good. Once again, I'm just shooting myself in the foot early, and I can't do that against a team as good as Cal. And thank the Lord that our defense held up on 3rd and 2 here. We were able to get some penetration, tackle the running back, and that really, it does minimize the damage a lot. It could have been a lot worse, so I'll take a field goal here any day of the week. Going a little bit deeper in the first quarter, I'm at 3rd and 20, but Olsen, our tight end, he bails us out. He makes a big catch. Looks like they were playing like cover 4 or something here. He's able to find that soft spot in the zone, and that means unless I mess up, I can at least tie up this game, which is a great position to be in. And 2 plays later, Craig is running the curl route. He punishes the DB for playing off of him. He makes a little play and he gets into the end zone, and we actually take a 7-3 lead. We're still in the first quarter, and this is like a play that I really want you to see here. Now up front, I know realistically that I'm calling super deep passing concepts, and that sometimes it's not realistic for a subpar team to have like 5 seconds in the pocket. But right here on this play, they're rushing two guys against 5 linemen, and they still are able to get through and get the sack. Now I know that I need a ton of time, but if there was ever a play to where I would have a lot of time to complete a pass down the field, it was this play. They're only rushing 2 men. And it goes without saying that the fact that just the 2-man rush can get this much pressure to force me to where I'm taking a sack, it's really, really frustrating. And what's even more frustrating is that College Football Revamped has that bug to where, like, if a penalty pops up, you just can't see the down and distance anymore. There's just a little blank plate at the bottom. It is what it is. I just can't stress enough how bad my line is at times. I don't really show it a lot because it's just not interesting to show sacks on first down and stuff like that, but I get sacked a ton, and oftentimes it's stuff like this where people just can't block a person. They're not even rushing. Like, it'd be like a 3-man rush and I'll still get sacked, and I don't want to go on a tangent, so let's just stop it here. And I think deep down you already knew what it was going to lead to. A 3rd and 20 where I feel really forced to throw it really far down the field. It can only lead to one thing with how this rebuild has been going, and that's another interception. They make a really deep return all the way to the goal line basically, and just like that, I'm kind of just throwing everything away. Cal's about to take a lead, and things are just not going that well right now. And this is a user game. These are games I'm supposed to be able to win to help my team out, but let's just calm down. Let's see how it plays out, shall we? So what I need to do here is I need to settle down. Just take it back a notch. The game is only a 6-point lead. I know I can do this. So what I start doing is just methodically, surgically driving down the field. I'm not trying to lob it over the top. I don't need to fandangle the ball in between 2 defenders 30 yards down the field. All I got to do is take a 5-yard route, 10-yard route. If the defense is giving us a run, I got to just go for it. Run the read option a little bit. And that's what I do. I end up stringing together a pretty solid drive. And overall, at the end of the day, I end up running it in. And we take a 1-point lead. And this is exactly what we needed, because at this point, you can just say, hey, it doesn't matter what happened earlier in the game. It doesn't matter that we've already threw 2 interceptions. We're in the lead. Things are pretty much even, clean slate. Just keep your mental up and just keep going strong from this point on. Easier said than done, I know, but I like to at least give you like my thought process during the moments. Now with a minute 39 left in the half, I have a golden opportunity and I can just go for the dagger. I picked up another field goal earlier, so it's 17-13. If I can string together a drive right before the end of half, I can really go up and really put a lot of pressure on the Cal team, and it starts off great. But what I want you to see here is that I'm running those signature 60 series option routes here. Hester makes a great read and he finds himself kind of getting over the top of the defense, and Carter delivers a perfect ball right into his hands that gives us another touchdown. And I'm not gonna lie to you guys, this brought a little tear to my eye because I've had to watch so many bad throws, bad interceptions, and just defensive linemen just getting straight to me that when you see these little glimpses of greatness, it feels really good. So that puts us up pretty big at halftime, and all we got to do is really just close it out. That's all we got to do. Very simple, right? The defense is playing pretty well. Now at this point, they've scored a couple of more field goals, so it's a pretty close game, all things considered. But I got to say one thing, one little insight about this game is that my tight end, Olsen, he was Cal's kryptonite this game. You can see just on this drive alone, he catches 3 pretty huge passes, and when I get close to I get in the red zone, I guess, the defense is so focused on all that crazy stuff going on in the back, all the route concepts, that he's able just to get free in the flat and just score a touchdown to put me up 31-19. But Cal they're simply not going away. No matter what I do, they just won't stop scoring. And deep in the fourth, we're looking at a 31-26 game. Olsen is going to drop a pass here. Now I think he probably would have been short anyway, but it would at least made for an interesting 4th down conversion to maybe seal the game. But this forces me to take a field goal, and with an 8-point lead, Cal has a real opportunity to maybe come back here. Cal immediately gets to work. They know they have enough time to where they can still run their full offense. They can run the ball and they can do whatever. And they start to pick me apart. They start getting little gains here, first downs here. And before you know it, they start driving down the field. And every first down they make, I'm getting increasingly worried, because just like that little hurdle earlier in the game, earlier in the video, I should say, where I fumbled the ball, if it can go wrong, it will go wrong. But at this point, I got one mentality. I can bend but not break. I can even give up the touchdown. I just can't give up the 2-point conversion. So I have a lot of outs here, and they're playing really well. They're doing everything. I can't stop them. They're breaking tackles. Things are getting pretty frustrating. And eventually it comes down to this. I start to get the play. I get a sack on 3rd down, and that's going to leave us with a 4th and 13 where they actually have an open receiver. He catches the ball. It looks like it's about at the line of scrimmage, which is pretty much at the goal line. But my defense wraps him up. We tackle him. It's short, and that means it's a turnover, and ultimately that means it's the end of the game. I win this one by 8 points. It was really close. It wasn't comfortable, but like I said earlier, Eric Olsen really stood up. I liked what I seen today, especially after Carter throwing some early, every game, pretty much every game I play, I have early interceptions, and I end up fixing it at the end, hopefully. But this was a pretty good win, especially considering all the recruits. So I'm glad to do it. We're one step closer to a bowl game. The fruits of our victory meant that we have signed 7 recruits. Now, unfortunately, Andy Boyd, Mark Bratton, the 242 speed guys, they did not sign, but we did pick up a lot of really solid recruits, and that should give us enough points to either go after some new guys that haven't been signed or just hope and pray that one of these guys will sign. But like I said earlier, I'll keep you guys updated what they end up doing. So at this point, we talked about the schedule early in the season. It's time for that huge gauntlet. USC's ranked number 1. They're A+, A+ overall, so there's literally no chance. But I need just one singular victory here to taste a bowl game. Maybe that'll happen. It's not going to happen here against USC. They beat me 44-20, kind of like you would expect. But let's see if maybe we can pull off an upset against one of these other teams. Oregon State surprisingly ranked number 14 at 7-2. They do rank better than us on paper. Maybe this will be the upset because the other games are kind of tough, but no, they beat us worse than USC did, 48-15. We got smacked around, and now we're 5-4, and I'm seriously thinking that we may not get to go to a bowl game despite, what did we start, like 4-0? 3-0? I don't even remember, but we started off hot, but we may have peaked out already, so who knows. Just to add more fuel to the fire here, we have number 7 Oregon coming up next. I think you already know how this one's going to go down, and once again, I believe that's back-to-back weeks where we gave up over 40 points. We lose this one 47-14. We're 5-6. There's one game left. It's against Utah. I think this team's going to need your energy to be able to make it to a bowl, so I hope you all have your hands up. But wait a second, friends. If you look at it here, Utah is actually 5-6. They had a really down year. Now on paper, they're like an A- team, so they are ranked a lot higher than us in terms of like talent, but this could be it. We're 5-6. Can we go 6-6? And the answer is no. They beat us 41-18, and I do believe like our last 5 games we gave up over 40 in each and every single game. So our defense looking pretty pathetic right now. We're gonna finish 5-7 on the year, but look on the bright side. That's 2 games better than last year. Going up, always positive. But I'll tell you guys what's not positive, and that's the fact that Mark Bratton, one of those 4.2 speed guys, has signed with Tennessee. That means we do still have Andy Boyd left, and our recruiting class is going to be pretty good overall anyway, but I really want one of these guys, and it's just kind of sad that one of them left already. But big news, I had to inform you guys. Mark Bratton, he's gone. He'll be playing down in Knoxville. So now let's kind of break down what happened. We know our season. We're not going to a bowl. Let's break down what happened in the rest of the country, starting with the Heisman Trophy. Roydell Williams, halfback at Alabama, actually took it home. Pretty cool to see. I know Roydell personally. I don't know why I said that, but roll tide to that. Pretty cool to see Tulane have a guy down there in it too. And before we hop into the playoffs, let's kind of take a look at some season stats and just kind of wrap up what we think about Colorado so far. Carter finished with almost 3,200 yards, which is good enough for 14th in the nation right now. This is about the only time that's fair to compare it to, because if you think about it, a decent team that plays 3 playoff games, they're going to play in a conference championship game. They're going to play so much more games than us. So 14th in the nation, not too bad. We did actually get slightly above our touchdowns, slightly above our interceptions this year. So that's a positive. But once again, man, 51% completion percentage. I don't like that. That's something I really want to improve. We'll see if we can get that done. And just like last year, I think my receiving core was the best part of the team, and they give me the most hope because the guys that are at the top here are going to come back for another year. In the case of Hester, he'll be here for 2 more years, I guess, depending on the draft and whatnot. But we had 2 guys almost go for over 1,000, and overall the distribution of passing here was pretty good. I think Craig and Hester really stepped up after losing our top 2 receivers last year, and to me, like I said, it's just, I think that's our bright spot for the season overall. Now, I want to talk about the playoffs. We'll go over it. I'll pull up the graphic for you guys. What we had going on this year was that USC was the lone undefeated team this year, number 1 seed. Everybody else is pretty good. You got a lot of 12-1, 13-1 teams. And I guess if I had to look at this playoff as a whole before I talk about the games, I would say that Tulane getting in at 12-1, pretty surprising. And then the biggest surprise of all here would be Oregon State getting a bye. They're like the number 3 seed, so they get a first round bye. So that's pretty cool. And on the left side of the bracket, you have the number 9 team, Oklahoma, beating Arkansas here. You got Penn State, the number 12 seed, beating the number 5 seed, Texas. So there's 2 upsets on that side. And then on the other side, the higher seeds just took care of business. And what we end up seeing in the buys here is that everybody takes care of business except for Alabama. We won't say roll tide to that, but Ohio State does pass them pretty easily by 10 points. In the Final Four, Miami and Ohio State have a chance to kind of run it back for a rematch of last year, but USC takes care of business. Oregon State cannot handle Ohio State, and that leaves us with a pretty juicy USC-Ohio State national championship game. And I wish I had some highlights for you, but USC, they kind of get dominated. Ohio State just comes out pretty big. They're going to end up winning by 2 touchdowns here, and I wanted to hop in and show some footage of the game because from my knowledge on the next game, we're not going to be able to hop into games that we aren't in control of, which is a shame. I wish they kept that in. It's pretty cool to jump into the national championship and just see the computer play each other like this, but Ohio State, that's the year 2 national champion. And overall, that's going to wrap up year 2. In terms of players leaving, it doesn't get any better than this. I only have 4 seniors that are graduating, and we do have 92 overall Nico Reed, but he's going to stay. I told him that we would win a national championship this year because, honestly, guys, what's he going to do if we don't? He's a senior. It's not like there's a transfer portal in this game or anything like that. In recruiting, I'm going to go heavy into 4.2 speed Andy Boyd, and let me ask you guys a question. What does everyone think about them removing 40 times from recruiting? It looks like just from the screenshots that you can't even see speed on the recruits. I'll have to wait and see, but I don't like that change. It makes me a little bit sad because I love speed, but let's see what ends up sticking with this recruiting class. I only end up getting 2 more recruits, but they are pretty big. Now, Jeremy Doty on the line is huge. Andy Boyd at the end of the day is a real big pickup. So now, considering last year with Robertson, or maybe it was the year before, I don't even remember, we have a couple of guys with some elite speed. Now this class is extremely good, coming in at 11th nationally, and that's just the kind of numbers that we'll need to see to finally get a winning season. Now there's only one thing left to talk about, and it's position changes, and that's Andy Boyd. He's excellent at DB or halfback, 81 overall, but for me, I think the speed is too transformative to be anything other than a wideout. He'll likely never be like the top receiver, the top guy, but as a third or fourth option with the ability to go over the top, I think it'll just accentuate the offense and give us like a dimension we haven't seen yet. Off-season training results are great. We have 5 90+ overall players, but what stood out to me is Carter. Once again, he put in that off-season work, and he's going to be a 90 overall. Now remember, I sat Breedlove last year in the hopes that we'll get him on the field maybe this year, but Carter, he looked me right in the eye and he said, "Hey coach, I got this. I'm your guy." And I kind of believe him at this point. Now recruiting looks better than ever. We got 4 stars flowing as far as the eyes can see, but my main needs now are like kicker, punter, and I have like a never-ending need of linebackers. Now there's really no recruits that I desperately want, nobody I have my eye on. I do like Ricky Bell. He's a safety. He looks really promising, really elite, but the main goal of this year's class is just to get really solid talent, just so I can fill up all these positions and just have really good players that maybe can start like in a year or two. Redshirting is the same as always, but my quarterback room is pretty crowded, and that's really not a bad problem to have. Carter's the 90 overall. He's the clear starter, but if you look below him, there's just a lot of solid overall. They're all freshmen or sophomores, and it gives me a lot of hope. But like I said earlier, Breedlove looks really explosive, but Carter, I think you have to go with him this year. Now we'll be kicking off year 3 in familiar territory against Colorado State, but this year we are a 91 overall team, so there's no excuse to not at least make a bowl game this year. So picking up in the second half of a tie ball game, this is what makes Boyd and his speed so dangerous. Now forgive me for using this back juke here. It's a little bit exploitative on the defense. It's a little bit of a cheap move, but what I want you to focus on is this elite speed on the field with a team like Colorado State. It's a huge mismatch, and players like Boyd or Robinson, they're going to take this team to the next level, I promise you. And if you don't believe me, look at this post right here. It burns the DB for another long score. And I don't know if this makes sense, but you can kind of feel when your team takes it to a certain level where you're finally just murdering any team that's just a lesser overall than you, but you're still kind of like in this weird position where top schools are still pretty tough. Now look at some of these passes, and it legitimately feels like it's impossible for Colorado State to maybe account for like 4 or 5 guys that I'm slinging it to. And with Carter's huge leap to being a solid elite quarterback that understands the system, I feel like everyone who wants it, they're getting to eat tonight. And I know it's just Colorado State. I shouldn't be jumping to conclusions, but this offense feels pretty great to play. I even got Breedlove in during garbage time just to see what he can do. He doesn't have like the awareness or the raw power that Carter has, but remember, this guy has 90 overall speed. He's like Mike Vick. And that ability to turn nothing into 12 yards like on this play like here, it's really good. It's like a dimension we don't have just yet, but this one's over. We got the rest of the season to worry about though. Georgia Southern is next, and this should be a wash, but to my surprise, it takes overtime to squeak out a victory here, and what once was like a ton of confidence from Colorado State has me a little bit worried. I am 2-0, that's great, but that schedule is only going to get a lot tougher from here, and there's no real excuse for a game like this to be this close. Hawaii looks to be an easy win, and thankfully I do put up 55 and I cruise, so maybe that Georgia Southern game was just an anomaly. And even though I jumped into Colorado State early, I do think that was a mistake. I should have just simmed that one, and I should have went for maybe all conference wins this year. And maybe I can get Arizona once again as that big recruit game, and I'll kind of pick my last game as something that I think I can win. As for now, USC is ranked number 2, and I think they're outside of my capabilities to guarantee like a win, but this schedule has some brutal spots in it. We play the number 2, number 10, 8, 20, and 11th ranked team. They're all lingering on the schedule, but remember, we're looking good right now, but I did also start 3-0 last year, only to go 2-7 in the final stretch, so just keep that in mind. Now USC is going to drum me 52-27, but after the game, center Chris Jordan says, "I like that result," and he signs with us anyway. Stanford is another game that it looks like maybe I could win, but I think I have better matchups to pick from later, and once again, My defense is just getting shredded on the Sims. I give up 48 points here. It hasn't been a great couple of weeks for my squad. The defense is looking pretty suspect right now. Arizona State is next, and I'm going to have to jump into this one, but look at these numbers. I do have a really high-powered offense. I have the #1 passing attack in the nation, but my friends, my pass defense and my overall defense is atrocious, and the only positive thing here is that Arizona State is somehow giving up 2023 Colorado numbers with over 475 yards a game, so I'm expecting this to be a big shootout. This game starts off like some vintage Colorado here, and by that I mean nothing good. I throw 2 picks in like the first 2 minutes of the game, and I guess at this point we should expect nothing less. After falling behind 10-0 early on a 4th and 3, they're showing blitz. They're kind of showing disrespect to Boyd here. He's really fast, we already know. And when you're blitzing and you don't have anybody over the top of this guy, you already know how it's going to go, especially since we've seen how bad Arizona State's defense can be. Going into the second, I get a touchdown. They have the ball. It's on 3rd down. I get a break here. I force a fumble, and that means I'm going to get great field position. Maybe I can take the lead, but a review does show that his knee was down. But for me, it's a win-win situation because they have to punt either way. And here we get to see freshman Byron Robertson. He's going to field the punt, and he just muffs it. Now, we got it back. It didn't matter, but it was almost a back-breaking turnover, and I guess the nerves of this freshman really got the better of him on this one. Now I'm just doing my thing, but I truly want you guys to understand just how poor Arizona State's defense is. On this play, I'm in 5 wide, the halfback is in the slot, and if you look at it, there's nobody within 10 yards of him, and I just call Hut, and I just hot ride him on the streak, and he's just open. It's like the easiest 50-plus yard touchdown that you'll ever see, and it's becoming very clear why their defense is ranked so low. With about 10 or so seconds left in the half, I cap off another drive with a Tyson touchdown to take a lead despite the awful start, and this one is a barn burner going into halftime. There are over 600 yards of offense, and I think things could still go either way. After a State fumble early in the second half, I get a short touchdown to Boyd. We go up 2 scores. And what I love about this offense is that someone else is always stepping up every single week. In this game, it's Tyson. He's caught touchdowns. He's caught everything thrown his way. And just look at this one where he gets a ton of yak yards, and he's just cooking this game. All this passing has also left me with gaping holes in the running game, and that's where Hankerson can get plays like this where he cuts back for a huge run. And I'm not going to just keep harping on how bad this defense is, but it really did feel like playing on junior varsity at times, and I know I'm up big, but this one isn't over yet. After stalling out a few times and just giving up a few too many big plays, it's only a 1 touchdown game around 2 minutes left in the 4th, and you can see just from these 2 running plays that I'm still gashing them up front, so I have no issue ultimately just running the clock out to get the win. And this one is pretty wild. I want you to look at these stats. There was over 1,000 yards of offense, 83 points, and honestly, this win didn't tell me anything about my team. I already knew that I was turnover prone. I already knew I had a bad defense. I already knew my offense was capable of putting up some great numbers, but a win is a win. But I'm really concerned, and I'm going to actually test out something because my defense is really worrying me at this point. I ended up changing my defensive scheme a little bit here. Now I'll look into sim logic and talk about that later, but I'm going to go to the 4-2-5 for now just to see if maybe it can change something around just a little bit, because something has to give at this point. Next up is number 11, Oregon, and oh baby, the Sims finally go in my favor. The Buffaloes pull off an upset. What a time to be alive, the Sims favoring me. And I don't think there's any correlation in the defensive changes here because we still give up 42 points, but that does put us at 5-2, meaning that in the final 5 games of the season, all I have to do is at least go 1-5 to get a bowl invite. Surely we can do that. So a real quick in-season update right now is Carter is actually leading the nation in passing, and Hestera, my receiver, is leading the nation in receiving yards, but we'll save kind of like the full stats for when the job's done. Arizona's next, and I'm actually going to play this one too. This is that game of the year where all the recruits are getting in on the action, and I need to win here, but I am 5-2, so there's actually a little bit more at stake than has been in previous years. Arizona's only 3-3, but they have an A+ offense, and overall their team's rated pretty high, so this one won't be as easy as maybe I thought, but it will be a good test. You know the drill by now. Play smart, no early mistakes, and just right on cue, 3rd play of the game, I throw another pick, and I have nothing to really say about it. No elaboration. And then just to pour salt in the wound, I'm pressing their receivers. I make an awful read with my user-controlled safety, and they're wide out. He's going to beat the press, and he's going to torch us for like a 46-yard gain. And just like that, they're up, and that's not the start that you want to see. They add to their lead. They even hold me scoreless, but finally, on 3rd and long in the second quarter, I get a break. Boyd hits that streak, finally gets over the top of the defense, makes a fantastic diving catch, also gives Carter the school's single-season touchdown record, and maybe we're not out of it just yet. So driving down the field a few minutes later, I'm primed to maybe tie this one up, but you already know I throw another interception. And I know this is my fault, but does anyone else ever feel like, hey, you throw the ball up and you're just not allowed to fight for the ball? The controls are unresponsive and your receivers will just sit there as somebody goes up and gets the ball. There's nothing for it, and I just hope there's more of like fighting for the ball in the next game. But the half's going to come to a close. I'm just desperately heaving the ball, hoping for a prayer here, but the reality is I'm in the hole 2 touchdowns. And I'm going to cut this one a bit short because I'm able to keep things close. I'm able to claw my way to within 6 points, and I actually have a chance to go ahead with a touchdown with just a little over 2 minutes left in the game, but I make a bad play. I roll out, and I should have just taken the yards here, but I thought, hey, I can just lob this ball over the linebacker's head, get a little heroic touchdown, everybody celebrating as we take the lead, and all it did was cost my team. I still had timeouts eventually with a chance, but a first down here late by Arizona just kind of seals the deal. I think this is my first user loss in this rebuild, and it's pretty rough because of the recruiting implications, but maybe it won't be so bad. I ended up signing 4 of the 9 guys, so I'm not too worried about it, but I still have an issue. I still have to win 1 of these last 4 games just to make it to a bowl, and I'm all out of user games, so it's all up to Sim. After our bye week, I do lose a few big recruits, but I do gain a Chad at quarterback, so that's pretty cool. And next, it's time for number 13 UCLA. Now, surprisingly, I actually have the ratings advantage here, so maybe it won't be as bad as I think, and I do win this one by 7. Now, it's kind of sad when only giving up 28 points feels like a good thing, but that's kind of where my defense is at this point. But that does make us bowl eligible, and maybe, just maybe, that little defensive shakeup is paying off a little bit. And we don't have too much time to rest after that win because we have number 10 Washington immediately up. But for the first time in 3 years of this rebuild, the UCLA game has us ranked 25th in the country, baby. We're ranked. And this sim was pretty wild. Look at these numbers. I ended up winning 60-56. And maybe I spoke too soon about my defense, but I want you to look at these stats. These are kind of silly. They're crazy. Carter threw for over 500 yards and 8 touchdowns, but Washington also had like 400 yards and 7 touchdowns of their own. And it's safe to say that in this game, defense was optional. And, you know, you give up 56 points, that doesn't inspire confidence, but it was a win over a top 10 team, and that's pretty cool. Next week, I climb up to 19th in the nation, and with 2-8 Oregon State on deck, maybe I can win this one. Their overall's a little bit better, but even with Sim, I feel like the team has just picked up a lot of momentum since we lost to Arizona. I do win this one 35-23, and just like that, I'm an 8-win team on a hot streak. That's what I want to see. Now, we have 1 game left against number 4 Utah, who had a resurgence since last year. I think they went like 5-6 or something like that last year, and a win over the number 4 team while being ranked number 17. It might put us on the outside looking in on the playoffs. You never know, but we do have to take care of business. Can we take care of business? The answer is no. Utah beats us 31-21, and that's going to end our regular season. We do end at 8-4, which is a massive improvement over years 1 and 2, and in fact, it's more wins than both of those years combined. Actually, I think those years combined to be only 8. You know what I'm saying, though. Don't think about that too much. But let's look ahead just a little bit. Bucky Irvin won the Heisman for Oregon, and the Buffs are going bowling this year against Wake Forest, and we're going to the San Diego County Credit Union Holiday Bowl, and Jesus Christ, do you think they could fit any more words into a bowl game if they tried? And if you look at this, it's no secret that our team was carried by our offense. Carter had a huge leap since last year. It landed him the Davey O'Brien Award, and not only that, but he's a first-team All-American, so that's pretty great. Now, his season, not counting the bowl, has been superb. He has over 4,300 yards, 46 touchdowns to 13 interceptions, and the number that I'm most pleased with here is the 64% completion rate. This is what I want to see out of my quarterback. And I might be alone in this, but I have restricted alternate uniforms up to this point until I felt that my team deserved it. And finally, I think it's time. I'm going to go into Wake Forest with the white helmet and the white pants, which is my favorite Colorado combination. And let's just get through this game real quick. Now here's all you need to know about this one. I was slinging it because I felt like a burden had been lifted off my shoulders here. I didn't care. I didn't even have to play this bowl game. But since Carter got all those accolades and the team performed so good, I just felt like I had to jump in and play it myself because it could be Carter's last game. Carter started the game 8 for 8 in this one. He's getting basically everything that he wanted, including this really weird looking play where I scramble out of the pocket like a madman and I throw it ill-advised between defenders and it just misses one of their hands, and Hysteria makes this catch somehow. Now if you look at the replay, you can see that he almost caught it like off of the defender's back. And that's just how things are going this game. That's like a microcosm for everything because I'm getting anything that I want. It wasn't like a huge blowout win, but eventually I did put in Breedlove just to see what he had a little bit. I know he can run the ball. He's really fast. Like I said, he's like a Vince Young, but I was just looking to see if he could throw maybe some pinpoint darts like this one here to Tyson. And after a weird safety on the next drive, he shows that he can just sling this thing. He has this ball in the air for about 60 yards and he hits Boyd for another touchdown. End up winning overall 47-34. And if this was Carter's last game, he had a wonderful season, maybe the best that Colorado will ever see. But I do think that I saw enough to know that I'm in good hands if Breedlove has to start. Now let's look at the playoffs. There were 3 undefeateds this year: Georgia, North Carolina, Ohio State. Utah got that 4th bid. They got the byes. Now Pac-12 did have 4 teams in the playoffs, and the Cinderella story this year was Texas State. They got in as a 10th seed, but I think maybe it's just me. You know how these little weak schedule mid-major schools always go in dynasty. They're just going to get thumped immediately out of the playoffs by Alabama because they're just not as good. They beat up on weaker teams, and the game overrates their ranking. I digress. I don't want to get into it. Now the story in this playoff for me was Florida. They got in at 8-4, and against all odds, they beat USC, and then they have to face #1 seed Georgia. It's like a rematch of a rivalry game, and it was essentially a home game for Georgia in the Peach Bowl, but they won. Then they moved on to the national title after handling Oregon. So they had a really good run here, very unexpected. That's what I like to see in the playoffs. That's why the 12-team playoff is so good in my opinion. But if you look on the other side, Ohio State, they're fresh off a national title win last year, and they also took care of business. They squeaked by North Carolina, and that leaves us with a scrappy Florida team against an undefeated Ohio State team looking to repeat. In this one, there's nothing else to say. It was a blowout. I was hoping to maybe get some footage late in the 4th, but Ohio State's just up 42-17, and that means that Ohio State has repeated as national champions in year 3. Going into year 4, it's the players leaving that worried me the most. Now, there are some really good players on this list, but if you kind of scan the list real quick, you won't see Carter. He was a first-team All-American, O'Brien Award winner, and he wasn't declaring for the draft, so this is neither here nor there. I don't know if you know, but if you're under like a certain height or weight for whatever position you're in, you're not eligible to be drafted. You can't even declare for it or even try. So looking deeper into like a chart that you can find on the internet if you're really that interested, but let's be honest, who cares about NCAA 14 this late when literally like in a few days we're about to play the new game? And what I'm trying to say here before I babble on too long is that Carter's weight is a little bit too low to be drafted, so that means that I just automatically get another year with him, so that's pretty good, I guess. That's like a godsend. He was already like 9-3 overall, so let's go for that. So for signing day, I'm just doing what I can. I end up landing some really good recruits, although I did want these 2 other linemen here, but I can't complain about an 80 overall defensive tackle. And when it's all said and done and you look at it, I actually have the number 7 overall recruiting class, which is really, really good. After the off-season training, my offense is looking stacked. Look at some of these overalls here. Carter has emerged at 98. Our 2 top receivers are 97 and 95. We have a 91 tight end, and our first string halfback is 90. And also don't forget that we have like real fast speed demons like Boyd at receiver and Robertson at halfback for extra wrinkles to kind of use formation subs and get into the game every once in a while for a few touches. And I think that this offense is going to be very, very, very good. And this could potentially be a year that we get it done or at least take it to the next level. Now it's crazy to me to think about that Carter and Breedlove were within 1 point overall of being the same, but when you see how things have kind of played out, I think you guys can understand why Breedlove is going to spend another year on the bench, because you cannot sit a 98 overall guy who just won the O'Brien. I'm going to keep the schedule. It's kind of the usual Pac-12 stacked schedule, but they put number 13 Michigan on there, so I'm just going to leave it. And my main focus this year on user games is going to be those big, tough Pac-12 games. And I just want to see if my firepower is enough to finally make some sort of push. And I think now we can talk about recruiting. I think this year and ultimately until I win the championship, it's likely going to be pretty boring now. At this stage, I have just a ton. I have any 4-star that I want. I already got like the top 7 class. I can just keep building on that. And unless there's any recruit that I'm looking at that I think will just be a game changer, I'm not going to talk about recruiting that much here and there, but we're at that stage where a bunch of 5-stars, 4-stars, anybody I want is just coming to the school and it's not that interesting. I start the season ranked number 14, led by an A+ offense, and the goal here is hopefully we build off last year. We went 9-4. And even then last year, I felt like maybe we were like 1 or 2 wins away from maybe sniffing the playoffs, so let's get to work. Up first is Colorado State, and I can no longer afford to use one of my user games here, so I gotta sim. I win 56-34. Now, looking at it, 34 points, kind of looking at it like, why is my defense giving so many points up? But we'll monitor the situation. Now, week 2, same exact trend. I have huge offensive production, but once again, 30 points I give up. But on the bright side, that's a 2-0 start. That's what you want to see. Now, here's the schedule once again, and I need to think about user games. In my opinion, I think the game at number 2 Oregon coming up is, I might lose that game no matter what. So I think I might just toss this up to sim. I'd rather just avoid it. I think maybe a game like UCLA or Stanford that are ranked a little lower, they might be more manageable. And then towards the end of the year, maybe you start looking at games like USC or Utah. But we can see how we do in aughts in here. And to my surprise, for the second, I think it's the second year in a row, I beat Oregon in sim. I think it's safe to say that it's going to be a trend that I'm going to put up a ton of points, but my defense is also going to give up at least 30 points regardless of the competition. And I can't say that I love the thought, but remember, we can't be too down right now because we are number 13 in the country and we just beat the number 2 team on the road. I'm going to end up simming UCLA next week because they are no longer ranked. They're 0-2 in the Pac-12. So I win this one better than the other ones. 27-17 is a score that I'll take. I think it's better than like 55-35, but a win is a win, I guess. And after a bye week, we've kind of reached a collision course with number 12 Stanford. Now, we have fallen up all the way to number 6 in the nation, so I think that this game is pretty big and I have no choice but to jump into it if I want to keep this momentum going. And if I had to describe this offense to you, how it feels to play, I would say that it feels like somebody's handing you the keys to a Ferrari and saying, good luck, kid. Everything just at times feels so effortless, and you know that no matter where you're attacking the field, that every single one of your skill players just has the ability to get the job done. Now, I come out with something to prove here, and I'm just posing my will over Stanford up until I get this really huge play that goes all the way down to the 1-yard line for a 1st and goal. So I end up stalling out here, and I'm on like the 1-yard line, maybe the inches line, and I'm going to go for it on 4th down just because it's a really big game. I feel like it's worth it, and I'm going to throw a really bad pass, and I didn't take one thing into account during this whole thing. I didn't take one thing into the equation, and that's the fact that my defense is not good. Now, I'm trying to make an early stop. I got them pinned back, but they trick us with the huge option keeper, and it's just off to the races for them. Now, it's one thing when you see like the sim numbers and you think, hey, maybe there's a problem with sim, but it's another thing when you experience the bad defense for yourself. Stanford's rushing attack, it just shoved it down our throat. They made every correct play call, and they just easily drove the length of the field. And once they started getting me to cheat a little bit on the run, they started passing, and it felt like they almost had no opposition on this drive, and it didn't really even phase them that they started on their own 1-yard line. To move the ball as well as I did early, just turn the ball over on downs, unfortunately, and then just watch the other team just drive down your throat for 99 yards without breaking a sweat. It definitely had me sweating a little bit. I do end up answering back with about a minute left in the first. I throw a bomb to Hestra, and finally we get over the top a little bit and I get a big play. And just to maybe play some mind games and kind of like rough up the score a little bit, I go for 2 and I get it. Carter ends up running it in and I have a 8-7 lead. Now let's talk about a route concept here. Now, Hestra is the nation's leading receiver. He demands a lot of respect, and he's going to run this little option route here where he like kind of runs up and he has the option to sit down in the zone or run like a dig route or a post. And here he's going to sit down in the zone, and since I I have another route from the trips running in the flat. That forces a defender to come up. So what this does when he sits down in the zone, it forces the safety to kind of hesitate for a second. And since my offense is so stacked, at the same time, I've had Boyd running this really slow developing wheel route around the side. And when that safety just hesitates for even a single millisecond, it's too late. And Boyd's going to get past him. And I just think that's a pretty cool pass concept. But right now, early, Carter already has over 200 passing yards. And here's where we have to talk about the yin and the yang of like a heavy passing offense. I don't really have any excuses, but I get my receivers mixed up here. It is what it is. Y and B are almost overlapping, and I think B's running the streak, but he's not. And I throw a really bad pick, and Stanford's going to waste no time scoring, and they're going to tie this one back up. I go down the field in the final minute of the half, and Olsen brings in a huge catch, and I love that Carter put it where only he could get it. Now, it's a touchdown, no doubt about it, but they did try to review it, but that does put me up 7 going into halftime. In the third quarter, it's tied at 22, and Hestra comes alive. This isn't consecutive plays here, but on this drive alone, he gets 5 targets and makes 5 catches, and that's pretty impressive if you're just considering in the confines of one drive. Some people only get 5 catches in a whole game. Now, he's dominating the right side of the field, whether it be slants, smoke screens, outs, corners, and if I were a smart man, and sometimes I'm not, I would use this success right here to maybe find other areas of the field open, other receivers that are open, but in this moment, I make a pivotal mistake in a really close game. I go to the Hestra well one too many times. I misread the defense. I'm seeing blitz. I don't know what I'm seeing here, but it's wrong. I end up trying to throw the smoke screen once again. It gets an interception. They read it like a book. And I think so far, this had to be one of the most devastating interceptions that I've had so far. Now, the trouble doesn't stop there. And here you're going to see an even bigger mistake. I have this little wrinkle in the offense where I put backup halfback Robertson in motion on like a speed option. And I guess in my head, I thought, hey, the ball will magically find its way to him if I pitch it. But the reality is that I have 3 guys waiting to gangbang me, and trying to pitch the ball right here is just going to lead to a really bad fumble, and they're going to recover. They're already ahead 7, and it put me in like a really dire situation. So late in the fourth, the invisible linebacker is going to strike again, and that's like my 4th interception of the game. And with the game already being 43-29, there's really no catching up. I end up losing this one 46-37, and I gave up over 200 yards rushing. And I think right now, one thing is very clear to me. I'm never going to be a significant team in the country. I'm never going to be able to compete if I cannot get out of my own way and stop doing these turnovers. Defense is bad, but I think the turnovers are more of an issue. When you look at it, this one didn't really hurt too bad in the rankings, but I can't afford to hop into a non-conference game, so I do have to sim this Michigan game here. I end up losing 34-24, and with my 2nd loss in a row, I think we may have peaked with that number 6 ranking earlier. I do win versus Arizona next week by a single touchdown. That stops a little bit of the bleeding, but that's not too important because we have USC coming up next. I'm number 10, they're number 9, and that's really about as close as the comparisons get. What I need you guys to know about USC at this point in the dynasty is that they are a triple 99 overall team that's fully stacked at basically every position. So it goes without saying that this is going to be a tough game, but I think this is one that we have to win if we're going to take that next step. Playing at USC feels like a Herculean task, and I think that Carter's going to need a virtuoso performance if we want to come out on top. I do have the clean all whites on the day to hopefully boost some morale, and the key here and in the future is going to be maturity. I have to know when to maybe take a safer play, maybe not throw it as deep, maybe run the ball, maybe minimize risk a little bit more. But let's see if that advice plays out. Early on they score, and they are after Carter like a pack of hyenas, and every play that they make, the crowd seems to get louder and louder, and then we're going to see my patented Colorado play style come through, and it would not be a game if I didn't throw another early pick. And already we're down 14-0, and that puts me on the verge of already wanting to give up. So that's going to lead to a 3rd and 10 where their quarterback Moss throws it deep, and I'm going to get mossed by their receiver, and it's fine. I'll take my lumps. I'm not complaining about this, but I swear, just like earlier with the receiver, I felt like my user-controlled DB felt like he didn't even try to play for the ball. And like I said earlier, I really hope next year's game has more fighting for the ball. That'd be very cool to see. It's like one of my personal things that I would really like to see. But just to keep it in the game here, I'm 21 points in the hole. I'm getting shut out on the road against a number 9 team, and I think this one is essentially over. But let's put our heads down and see if we can get to work. I think the mark of any decent team is composure, sticking with the game plan, just playing things out and just doing your best is always important. And after a couple of really solid passes in the second quarter, something finally happens. Boyd takes the top off the defense, and maybe we can breathe some life into this corpse of a team. Now I get the ball back, and Boyd is starting to cook, and USC's defense is starting to look like a patented Lincoln Riley coach team. On the next play, Boyd is going to break away deep, and it looks so wide open, and it is. And I talked about this same concept earlier, maybe just a few minutes ago, but this is that same exact concept where I have like a 95 plus overall receiver. He demands a ton of respect, and it's like that little flood concept. On Sim, USC actually fumbled the ball on the next possession, and it gave me the ball back, which is cool that Sim's on our side, but I'm not wasting any time picking apart this defense. Now at this point, they're kind of shaking in their boots. They don't want to give up that big play again, so I'm able to strike again and again and again underneath, and that includes 2 catches from my tight end Olsen, with the second catch being a tried and true little stick concept where he's going to sit down in the zone, and that means the game is tied up. And if you don't believe in momentum, I want you to look at this. On the first play of the next drive, I get a sack on Moss. I'm not really sure what's happening here. He looked like he got tickled or something and went down on the ground, but I'll take it. And on the very next play, Moss breaks a cardinal rule. He underthrows the out route and throws it late, which lets me get on that user pick. And at this point, I'm pretty much standing up because this game is going my way. It's got me hyped up. And right after that, I'm going to punch it in. I'm going to take a lead. And honestly, guys, I never really look back from this point on. And if you want to know how it started versus how it's going, look at my first quarter numbers compared to the second quarter. I had 18 pathetic yards in the first. I was down 21. And then I had an explosion of 208 yards and 4 touchdowns in the second quarter alone. So in the third, I'm running a motion read option out of 5 wide. I love this play. The defense does commit to Robertson's speed, and that lets Carter cut it up for himself to give a 2 touchdown lead. And this one's not over by any stretch of the imagination, but USC is trying to get by with only rushing 3, and part of that maturity that I mentioned earlier is reining in my tendencies a little bit. When I see a 3-man rush, just take off for little free chunks of yards like this, and I think it made all the difference in the world for this game. With a kick in the fourth quarter, I maintain a 2-possession lead, and the final brush stroke on this little masterpiece is when I'm up 3, I call an audible that hits Robertson on a little slant route in a very tight window, and that's during a point in the game where USC has already started to call their timeouts, and that's going to end the game. So I'm going to beat number 9 USC 38-35 on the road. We were down 21-0 early, and I said earlier that Carter would need to have a virtuoso performance, and he really did step up, especially after the team and himself was just really struggling in that first quarter, and this is a huge win. So after the bye week next week, I've already signed the majority of my recruiting class, but it's time for that big visit of the year, and it's against winless Arizona State, and we've managed to actually climb back up to number 6, so that's pretty cool. I end up winning this one handily, 42-13, but the important part is that 4 of the 6 visiting recruits all signed, and I think it's time to focus on the last 3 games left of the season. Oregon State is 4-5. It has pretty decent ratings, so let's see what happens. And I'm actually going to end up losing this one. It's a heartbreaker. I lose by 3 at home. And I feel like, this isn't great, not what you want, but I can still control my destiny at this point. But once again, I do think that I probably peaked at number 6. Let's see how far we're going to fall. And I end up going all the way down to number 18, which I feel is like absurd. I feel like it's personally really harsh to drop you that many points. 12 spots for losing to essentially a 5-5 team. But on the positive side of things, my final 2 games are against ranked opponents, so if I can just take care of business, I can still be in a good spot. So I can still play one of these games. I'm going to play Utah later, so that means I do have to sim against number 14 Washington, and it looks like I'm going to lose here, and that's pretty much going to be like the final nail in the coffin as far as like maybe a playoff run or like a conference championship goes. And the main question right now I have is if I'll even be ranked after having back-to-back losses. It turns out I'm not. Technically, I'm ranked number 26, just outside of the top 25. And if you look at Utah, they're actually the number 1 team in the country. So I'm going to have my work cut out for me. If we take a retrospective look back at the schedule, Oregon State does look like the tragic loss that broke the camel's back. But I would say it's more on our defense. Now, I know our offense is stacked, but the fact of the matter is right now, I added this up, I did the averages. I'm giving up over 32 points a game so far, but we'll return later to talk about defense and my plans for that. We got a game to play. Paradoxically, this game does not matter. I don't even have to play it. I can't win the conference, and I'm basically mathematically cut out of the playoffs, so it doesn't matter. I'm also going to go to a bowl game no matter what, but I only have 7 wins, and I guess the thing that matters to me is not regressing, because if I don't win this game, I won't be able to win 9 games, and that means I'll kind of slide back a little bit. So I don't really want to lose, and this is also just a big test to see how I can handle some of these big games, and if I could somehow win here, I think the momentum going into next year would be really huge. But that's enough talk. Let's see if I can maybe execute a game plan like I did against USC. Now prepare yourselves, because we're going to see a very, very, very familiar introduction play out. I'm finding the open guys, I'm not forcing anything, I'm being smart, I'm driving down the field, and there's almost like some kind of cosmic force here that just makes me underestimate linebackers. Now to be fair, this is a bad throw. It should have been thrown a little bit more to the left, but either way you look at it, I throw a pick early in the first quarter. So on their drive, I do force 2 third downs. It gets really close to getting the ball back, but on each one of those third downs, they just pick me apart. The first one kind of crosses the field on the right side, gets a huge gain, and on the second one, I get caught on a streak. And I wouldn't even say that I had specifically bad user play here. The ball was just thrown perfectly, and my safety just wasn't quick enough to get back there, and I'm in a 7-point hole early now. So on the next drive, I throw it to Hankerson. It hits him right in the hands, and it's gonna like deflect off of him, go right into Utah's hands, and they're gonna get a pick 6, and this game honestly already feels over. But let's take a look at this play again, because it made me kind of mad. Now tell me with a straight face that this ball did not hit the ground. I think the refs definitely had kind of like their blindfolds on, and or maybe they needed Utah to win this one. I do try to challenge it, no success, so it just goes without saying that I'm beyond frustrated, because I think this ball was clearly on the ground and not an interception, but it is what it is. So I'm going to do my best to get back in it. I get a touchdown, but here I'm going to miss a field goal. And I'm not even going to talk about things like the drop passes or any of the drives that started promising where I had to punt, but I'm just going to throw another pick in the second quarter. So skipping ahead about midway through the third, they just clapped me at this point. It's 38-14, and as I try my best just to maybe force desperate deep passes, hoping and praying right here, it's clear that Utah deserves to be the top team in the country, and that's going to drop us to 7-5, and we're going to lose this one 55-27. To no one's surprise, another halfback won the Heisman. Jordan James from Oregon takes home the trophy, and our bowl invite this year is a rematch against Colorado State in the Las Vegas Bowl, which is pretty disappointing because I'm not sure anybody wants to see that. Who cares about playing Colorado State for a second time in a year? And what's funny about this year is despite Carter having virtually the same year as last year, I wasn't even in the top 2 for the O'Brien this year, or I didn't get any All-American mentions. He leads the nation in passing. He's got 4,200 yards, 47 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, and a 68% completion percentage. I think he's worthy of getting an award in my opinion. I think his stats are slightly better than last year, but I think getting snubbed here, it doesn't, with how this season has went so far, it doesn't really surprise me. So I'll be honest with you guys, I could care less about the bowl, so I'm going to sim it. I'm going to win it. The stats will be on the screen. Carter does really good in his last game, good for him, but I want to talk about sim logic. So I did some very, very light reading and testing on this because I don't want to invest too much time because we're not going to play this game much longer. But there's 2 things. Number 1, if you have longer quarters like I do, I run 7-minute quarters, your defense will just be inherently on the field more. And if you run a pass-heavy offense with the slider set to aggressive more, it'll kind of double dip. And I think those are the main reasons that I can see why the defense is always underperforming. So I'm going to make some changes there and see if that can fix our defense. But if you want to go for like a pretend kind of immersion reason why I'm doing this and what this equates to in terms of the dynasty here, let's pretend that I am going to go out and hire one of the best defensive coaches in the nation to lead my defense. I'm going to make scheme changes, all my recruiting efforts, all off season, we're focusing on defense, and that's like the plan and the kind of storyline going into next year. Now we can look at the playoffs, and there's a big problem that NCAA 14 has, and it seems like it always happens when you get deeper into the dynasty. There's always little teams like Arkansas State. They'll go undefeated, and the computer will just deem them as the very best team in the country, even though nobody believes it. So here, Arkansas State, undefeated. They're going to get a first round bye. They are the only undefeated team in the nation. So the top 4 byes here are going to be Penn State, Oregon, Florida, and apparently the best team in the country, Arkansas State. And when you look at it, outside of USC beating Washington in the first round, all of the higher seeds advance to the second round. There's also, once again, there's 4 Pac-12 teams. And I don't want to toot my own horn here, but I will say that I was 2-2 against these teams. Take that for what you will. But predictably, Syracuse does thump lowly little poor Arkansas State to move on. And overall, Utah is the only top 4 team that got a bye that actually moves on. To no one's surprise, on the other side of the bracket, Ohio State is in the mix. They're in the top 4. They crush USC. Utah ends up getting past Syracuse. And our championship game is going to be set to be Ohio State and Utah. And I guess Ohio State is going to either win or be in the national championship every single year. And this one is a 7-point game, and it's decided on this play right here. Utah has a chance, but on third down they get sacked. They're going to punt it away, and that's going to put Ohio State in position just to run the ball, take a knee. And it's really, really crazy to me. Think about this. Ohio State made it to the title game and lost in year 1. They won it in years 2, 3, and 4. And at this point, why even have a playoff? Just let Ohio State play the top team. But all jokes aside, Ohio State has to be one of the most dominant teams ever in this dynasty at this moment. And now, let's take it to year 5 and talk about it. Up front, this might look like a problem here. We have 12 players leaving, with Carter being the biggest one and Hestra being a close second. They both come in at 98 overall, and they both pretty much rewritten every significant record in the school record book. And if you glance around here, 91 overall tight end Olsen is also leaving, and all 3 of these guys have played an integral part in getting this team over the hump. But let me tell you something about NCAA football in general. This really isn't as big of a problem as you might think, because year 5 marks a big leap most of the time, because it's kind of like the culmination of all your hard work and recruiting, and it means that your team for the most part is fully yours, and it's full of guys that you put in the time to get to come to the school. And I guess the long and short of what I'm trying to say is that for every key player leaving here today, there's 1 or 2 equally talented guys that are going to step up. But I do have to give props to Hestra for becoming a first round draft pick prospect. And I did already talk about earlier why Carter isn't listed at all. It's because of that weird little weight limit the game has, but let's move on. So the class is shaping up to be pretty solid, and at this stage I'm going heavy on Matt Oliver on the line, and I want athlete Dante Green. I end up getting the former rather than the latter, and that's going to end up getting us the number 3 overall recruiting class, and I think I'm alright with that. Training results have this team looking better than any of the teams before it, and just like last year, this offense is going to be stacked. Tyson has stepped up with Hestra leaving, and he's going to be a 99 overall. Hankerson, he's in the backfield at 95. Breedlove's also a 95. And Harris, he's going to round up that number 2 receiver spot for a modest 90 overall. And let me give a shout out to my offensive line, because I think they progressed a lot, and they are really like the cogs that get this machine working. And I'm not going to talk about recruiting just yet. It'll become clear later why I'm not. But you can just see here, I got my pick of the litter. So many 5 stars, 4 stars, they all want to come to the school. I'm going to start this year ranked 27th, which is good enough in the grand scheme of things. But what I want you to focus on is at the top here. This offense is a 99 overall, and the defense that was a huge liability in the past couple of years, they've risen up to be a very respectable 90 overall. And just remember, my dedication and my focus over the offseason was that side of the ball. Now, if we can go from maybe giving up 35 points a game just to maybe 28, I think we could easily eliminate a few mistakes here and there, and there's no reason that we can't win 10 plus games. So I'm pretty excited to see what we can do. And I know this is going to sound weird, but we're going to pick back up in week 6 against USC. I'll double back and I'll cover some other things, but just trust me, just like with recruiting, it'll be very easy to explain why I'm doing this. But just know that I'm 17th, they're 16th, and USC is kind of falling off a little bit. They're 2-2. They went from an A+ overall in every category to having 2 A- ratings, but let's just dive in. I think historically, if you look back at Colorado, this is going to be marked as the arrival of Jeremy Breedlove. Now, he sat patiently behind Carter. He put in the work, and this guy, he's pretty special. He's like a Vince Young or like a Lamar Jackson. He puts inherent pressure on the defense that at times it makes it feel like if they blitz ever, they're just going to lose, because in previous years, I would either get sacked or maybe I'd force a throw that would maybe be like a turnover. But with an athlete of this caliber, a guy this fast, he can turn those kind of negative plays into first downs. And that extra gear and that dimension combined with this offensive scheme that was already potent, it's going to take it to an elite level. Now, if my offense was pretty good the last couple of years, then I guess I have to say that it's great now. And I'm showing a bit of a compilation, mostly just little medium range plays here to show off Breedlove's ability to maybe read a defense, improvise some runs, maybe run the ball on keepers, and he can even throw some lasers for a couple of touchdowns. But here it's about 3 minutes left in the first, and I would like to touch on something that I said a couple of seconds ago. Now, this is a play we've seen countless times in the rebuild. The defense are covering everything, nothing is developing, and eventually the D linemen, they're going to break free. And if we do a freeze frame right here, I'll tell you how this play goes, or how it usually goes, I should say. You're going to get sacked, you're going to lose like 8 yards, or even worse, you'll fumble, or maybe you'll try to lob it up to like A, you'll take an interception, and that's usually how it goes. But like I said earlier, if they get pressure, this is where Breedlove shines the brightest in my opinion. He's able to use that speed and that agility to just run away, he eludes the defender, and I turn a play that could be any of those negative scenarios that I just said, and he just turns it into an 8-yard gain. And of course, I have to slide, I have to practice that new wear and tear system coming up so I don't take a bunch of hits. So later, with the half winding down, here's another little wrinkle here. It's 4th and inches, and I feel like a play like this with Breedlove is just unstoppable. You see all the routes, they're flowing to the left side of the field. I have the halfback running a flat, and this will be a called rollout play, and it's almost like an option play in essence. Basically, I'm going to roll to the left if they have like spies or defenders ready to stop the run with Breedlove. I have several options, whether it be Harris on the comeback route, all these guys running over, maybe Hankerson in the flat, and it's just really hard for the defense to stop. So from there, USC, they sort of start to unravel. Now, for all the praise that you can give Breedlove and his talented abilities, he's still a really gifted passer, and this laser right here to Boyd puts us up 21-3 at the half. And then when we get to the middle of the third quarter, this is a 62-yard wide open bomb to Harris, and that's ultimately going to put the nail in the coffin. I go for 2 for some reason here, I don't know why, and here's why I skipped a lot of the season up to this point. The game froze. I don't have autosave turned on, so it just skipped a lot of stuff. I had to go back and redo it. So I'll circle back and go over how things are going to be. And I know I didn't really go too in depth with this game, but I just want you to see that this was the arrival of Breedlove. Now, you guys seen what he can do, and I just wanted to sort of gush about it just for a little bit. And even though the game froze like it never happened, I do want this game to be canon. But my final thoughts here is that this team definitely plays like a 99 overall offense. So to catch us back up with some things that I didn't mention, year 5 is a prime spot to take all my points out of recruiting and put them into game management, and that'll give us boosts and advantages during the games that'll let us just play better. And let's look at the schedule where I've already simmed to the games that I've already supposedly played before it froze. So we are at the Arizona State game, which is like 2 weeks after the USC game. You can see now that we're ranked 4th in the country, and outside of maybe San Jose State or USC putting up over 30 points, the defense at least looks serviceable up to this point in the season, but we have a ton of momentum with 6 games left in the season. We end up squashing Arizona State 44-17, and Washington is having an up and down season. They too fall 45-13, and then we're going to beat another bottom feeder team in Washington State 27-13. Now we have Cal next. They have a decent squad with a 6-2 record. They're ranked 18th in the country, but if you take a peek at my schedule, this game in Utah seem to be the only games left that could cause any issues. So with 4 games left and a very comfortable number 3 ranking, there's maybe even like a spot in the Pac-12 championship and even a potential playoff bye. They seem within reach, but it all starts by taking care of business against the Golden Bears. And I guess it's worth noting that this is kind of like the big recruiting game of the year. Doesn't really matter in year 5, but what matters is the implications that this game has for taking home the title. Picking up midway through the first, I'm in a 7-0 hole, and look at Tyson here. He fights his way through tackles. He picks up a huge gain to help us get back in it. And don't sleep on Tyson. Remember, this guy's a 99 overall right now. Cal forces an early 4th and 4, and I do go for it because I just trust the offense. And Breedlove, he stands tall in the pocket, doesn't try to run. He connects with Page. He keeps the drive alive. After being patient on a developing slant route a few plays later on 3rd and 10, Breedlove is ultimately going to keep the ball himself on a read option, and we're going to get the game-tying touchdown. I do go for 2 here. I just said I went for 2 against USC, and I don't know why I do this. It's not my play style. I'm going to hit Boyd here. He's going to toe tap. We're going to take the lead. And like when I watch all this footage back to like go over it, I don't know why I went for 2 so much, but I'm not going to question it right now. Later in the first, Tyson is starting to cook. He takes his little smoke screen, he gets that little 1v1, makes the guy miss, and he picks up some really good yardage. And it's hard to describe this offense. It's almost too good, if that makes any sense. And it's just so fun when you've kind of learned an offense really well and you just have the privilege of having so many talented guys execute it. Because if you look at a play like this where we're running the speed option and we're going to score again, it's just so easy to forget about players like 96 speed, backup halfback Robertson, because the reality is that he's probably like the 7th option on the team. He doesn't touch the ball that much, and it really just gives a good picture about how deep this team is. Moving ahead, Cal is keeping it close. It's 15-13, but the focus here is this ball right here. It's not the best throw, but Boyd doesn't care. He goes up in front of a defender, he comes down with it, and we extend our lead once again. Later in the third, I want to highlight this play because I think that this is like a pinpoint, perfectly thrown ball on a rope. It's not a touchdown, but in my opinion, this is the kind of throws that you see on Sunday. A few plays later, we see almost a repeat here. The ball is just thrown really good, but Boyd just can't quite get his toes down. I did challenge it unsuccessfully, but this play is significant because I have to take a field goal, and here's what that's going to lead to. Cal scores right before the half, and then they score again, and they actually take the lead. So they're going to go for 2, and they're going to try to take a 3-point lead, but I do stuff it. But what once looked like a runaway game has turned into us playing from behind. There's still a ton of time left, and there's no real pressure to do anything out of character or just rush anything. And I've already spoken a ton about this offense, so you know that they'll do what they need to do. They'll execute plays, take the free yardage on a scramble when things aren't there, and ultimately I'm going to drive down the length of the field where Hankerson is going to convert the go-ahead touchdown. I am going to fail the 2-point play here, but I need to talk about where this team has truly stepped it up, and that's on the defensive side of the ball. Now, you're not going to see the most flashy or the most dominant players in the country, but they just really get the job done as a unit. Now, this line does what great defenses do. They can get pressure without blitzing, and my secondary can just take away the best guy, and it can just blanket coverage. And what you're going to see on these 3 plays where their quarterback almost looks lost at times is that they play at a pretty high level. Now, in previous years, teams just did whatever they wanted to us, and there's no doubt if it was one of those years, Cal would have probably put up 40 by now, but I just can't stress enough how much better it feels this year. I do tack on another field goal. We got an 8-point lead, and skipping ahead to the 4th, it's only a 2-point game, but Cal, they're not going to get another chance at it as I run the ball, I force their timeouts, and I kill the clock. This game is a lot closer than you would like a game to be at this stage in the season, but it's a win over a ranked opponent, and sometimes I think surviving is just good enough. Now we're number 2 in the nation. I take care of business on the road with a 2-touchdown win over UCLA, and up next is Oregon State. Remember, last year they started our downfall, so I was really worried, and for a good reason. We're only going to win by 1 touchdown, but notice now that Colorado is now the top-ranked team in the country. It took 5 years to get to this point, and if you look at the rankings, we are the last undefeated team in the country. Now, don't look at Arkansas State's little Weasley team hanging around at number 3. I don't want to think about them just yet, but this whole season has led us on a collision course on the road against number 6 Utah. This game has a ton of implications, but if you look at the Pac-12 standings, a loss here means that I'll be tied in conference play, and they would go to the Pac-12 championship over us because they had the tiebreaker. I think that either way, I'm going to be making a playoff appearance, but if I want like a first round bye, I do have to make it past it. And remember this, I'm 0-4 against this team in the rebuild, and it's a very hostile environment on the road. I think it's safe to say that this is probably the biggest game in the rebuild, and a win here would be huge. That goes without saying, but it would also kick off what would be a huge gauntlet of really tough opponents, and there's really only one way to see if we're ready. And I think the answer is going to be a resounding yes. Now, sometimes when you get really good at NCAA 14, you can start to just see a ton of deep passes over the top, and you see me do that from time to time, but here you're going to see a clinic. Breedlove goes overall 7 of 8 on this drive. There was only 1 single run play, and what was really impressive to me was that the majority of these throws were like 15 yards or less, so it was more of this methodical, precise, and controlled drive that ultimately leads to Page catching the pass. And I don't even think I've mentioned Page yet, but his name will come up more. But that was a pretty dominant drive to take a 7-0 lead. But I have to talk about the other side of the ball. The Utes start their drive by getting sacked early, then I stuff the run, and I'm going to force an early 3rd down play. And after showing so many interceptions that I've thrown, finally, it's my turn. I get the user pick, and now the momentum is at an all-time high already. And on the very next play, Breedlove wastes no time. He punishes them with a play-action pass. He hits Page for the 2nd time this game with a laser, and that's going to put us up 14-0. I keep the momentum going with another strike to Tyson, and that gives us a 3-touchdown lead, and we've started to snowball really hard. Now just look at this play in the 2nd to Page, where he's double covered. He goes between the defenders, and he just wants the ball more. And Page he's a relatively quiet guy. We haven't mentioned him much, much, but that's his third first half touchdown against Utah, and that's huge. It's safe to say that you really can't play much better than this, and you really can't make a much bigger statement on this stage. And I want you guys just to look at Breedlove's stats here. He's 24 of 28 for 5 touchdowns, and keep in mind that this is just the first half. I think this is more than just a blowout of a top 5 team. It's more of like a declaration that Colorado is a real contender and that Breedlove maybe deserves the Heisman. The final in this one is 59-21, but remember, things are about to really heat up from this point on. The Pac-12 championship will be against number 2 Stanford, and I can't say for sure, but even a loss here, I might still get a playoff bye considering that the number 2 team has 2 losses already, but it should be a good game regardless. I mentioned the Heisman earlier, but Breedlove is poised to take home the trophy, barring a disaster next game, and his stats are not the best ever, but for me it's like the efficiency that stands out. He's leading the nation with nearly 4,000 passing yards, 43 touchdowns to only 7 picks, and he has a very nice 69% completion percentage, but remember, this guy's a dual threat, so that means he's tacked on an additional 762 rushing yards for 4 touchdowns. His numbers alone, they speak for themselves, but in my opinion, I think it's his game-changing abilities where he can just take over, and that's really the reason that Colorado is 12-0 right now. But let's get into the games. In our first Pac-12 championship game, I'm looking to make a statement, and I don't want to take Stanford lightly, but I will say that at 10-2, it feels more like maybe they just defaulted here because other teams lost, but we still got to play the game. So early in the game, I'm looking at a 4th and 3. I'm aggressive. I'm going to go for it. I'm doing a fake motion read option, and after almost getting touched in the pocket, it was really close here. Breedlove's going to get out and convert. This leads to an immediate Tyson touchdown. We get that early lead, and after my defense clamps down, I'm forced to take a field goal later, but this is embarrassing here. I actually missed. It's like a chip shot. It just kind of doinks off. I really don't want to talk about it. And things stay relatively quiet until the end of the first, where Stanford calls a pretty heavy blitz that's really obvious. And guys, at this point, you got to know what happens when you blitz Breedlove. You lose. I'm able to escape, buy some time, and I just launched the ball 55 yards down the field for a huge gain by Boyd. Page is going to end up getting in for 6 in the next play, and this is kind of like where the floodgates start to open up. 5 minutes left in the second. It's 4th and 4. They are blitzing, but Breedlove, he stays cool. He finds the open man, and the drive continues. And a little bit later, Robertson is going to get the ball on the read option. He finds the cutback lane. He gashes the defense, and just a couple of plays after that, he's going to catch an out route. He's short of the first down line, but he does break a tackle, and he just walks into the end zone, and that makes this a 3-score game, and I think this one is all but over. Breedlove puts up another impressive performance, all but cementing that Heisman, and I'm going to win the Pac-12 championship with a final score of 48-14, but most importantly, I do secure that first round bye in the playoffs. Breedlove takes home the second ever Heisman Trophy in Colorado's history in a landslide victory, but there's also some awards to talk about as well. On the defensive side of the ball, Carey brought home 2 himself. He got the Bednarik, and he also got the Butkus. He's like the linchpin of our defense, and it's good to see some of these players get recognized for that because they really stepped up. Breedlove also brought home the O'Brien, and I won Coach of the Year, Coach Chicken Dog, so let's talk about the playoffs now. Here's how the first round's going to look. We're the number 1 team in the country. We got a bye along with Auburn, Missouri, and that pesky little Arkansas State team that wants to believe that maybe they can hang with the big boys. And let's just see how the first round played out. Now, to no one's surprise, Ohio State is still in this thing with a win over Wisconsin. They're always there. Clemson gets the slight upset over Utah. Florida wins over Stanford. Notre Dame spanks South Carolina, and that's going to set up the second round of the playoffs. So the second round kicks off with 9th seed Florida against the number 1 Colorado Buffaloes, and I'm really most interested to see if the defense can keep up their hot streak. So this game starts off great with a coverage sack to set up the tone early, and let me talk about my homework for Florida. They have the top rushing attack in the country, so I'm looking for the run, and if you need to know one thing, Florida only passes for like 150 yards a game, so if I can get them into like 3rd and long situations like this, I do feel good about my chances, and they're just going to throw the ball into the ground and give us our first crack at offense. And I think you already know one thing about SEC schools. They're going to have really good defense, and I just cannot seem to get anything going early on, and it's a bit of a field position game, and I get a really fantastic punt here. And this is where Florida is going to start to go to work. Now, you'll see all sorts of wrinkles from their run game, whether it be options, fake dives into tosses, or maybe just like traditional power runs, but they had me on my back foot for a second. But let me tell you guys one thing. In my opinion, heavy running teams on the biggest stages against like the top talent, it just doesn't work anymore, because once you get a single big stop and maybe you force a long down situation, you just eliminate their ability to do what they do best, and even though they started to gash us a little bit, end up surviving without giving up any points. Here's where we start to get in trouble. When you've played as good as I have this year, you get a little bit overconfident. You start thinking, hey, I just won the Heisman, I can outrun these dudes. And I just get ran down like the dog that I am, and I get a 22-yard sack, and the Gators might be the real deal. That's going to set up a 3rd and forever, basically on my own goal line, but with the pressure closing in right in my face, I'm going to toss up a prayer, and Boyd's going to answer it. He's going to come down in traffic, and he's going to keep this drive alive. From there, I start cooking. I'm slicing, I'm dicing, and generally I'm figuring out what adjustments I need to make. But after a really good drive where I'm making a lot of good reads, the same situation as earlier comes up again. They just catch me off guard with a blitz, and just like last time, I can't outrun these SEC DBs, and I'm just running in the wrong direction. I take a gigantic sack, and it's 3rd and forever. So here's like a weird personnel lineup I have. I don't think I've ever shown this in the video. I have the tight end in the backfield. I'm going to motion him out, put him on a streak. I have an option route on the other side, and I'm hoping they're playing like cover 2 and I can find a void in the zone, and that's what happens. I end up getting a 27-yard strike to finally score the first points of the game. Things are tied at 7, and it's a really close game, but this run right here, it straight up mimics that Tommy Frazier Nebraska run that was also conveniently against Florida. He just refuses to go down. He breaks like 4 tackles, and he's actually going to take this to the house for 79 yards. And I know that this game seemed close, but just for the sake of this video not being over 2 hours long, I have to play spoiler and let you guys know that Florida pretty much completely ran out of steam at this point. But this was a good run. I would dare say that this might be the best play I've seen in like a decade plus of me ever playing these NCAA games. It's a really good run. I like it a lot. And finally, with a little over 2 left in the half, they finally show their hand with a blitz. I recognize it, and it was just a matter of time before I took the top off the defense, and this is a done deal. I see them the rest of the game. I ended up winning like 52-7, and it might be a strange thing to say, but Florida was extremely difficult to go against. That first quarter was pretty rough, and I don't know if it was maybe me just kind of figuring things out or what, but it's almost like they started off like it was a boxing match, and they just threw nothing but haymakers in round 1, and they just tired themselves out, and it just seemed like they couldn't do anything else after that. Now let's take a look at the playoffs after that. Missouri's going to beat Notre Dame by 2 possessions. That's going to be who we play in the next round. Auburn's going to lose in overtime to Clemson. And right here, this is perhaps the biggest upset that I've ever seen in my entire life. Arkansas State beats Ohio State 42-40. Remember this, Ohio State, they've been to every national title game in this whole entire rebuild, and they've won the last 3 straight. So they're like on a 3-peat. And Arkansas State is the team that dethroned them. So that's pretty impressive, I got to say. And I know I've kind of talked a little bit of smack about these little lower teams in Arkansas State in general, but maybe I need to take it back because we could face them, you never know, but we do have another game to worry about. Now when I say that my defense took a massive step up from last year, I want you to look at these stats. They're 1st in the nation in points allowed, they're 5th in yards allowed, and I have the #1 rush defense in the country. And in my opinion, this is the reason why we are here right now. We already knew that the offense, they've been clicking for years now, but the defense, it's really good. But I don't want to admire myself too much because I still have some tough opponents left. Now the narrative here for me is that a lot of people, they said that Missouri shouldn't have gotten this bye because they didn't even make it to the SEC championship. They just kind of moved up to 4th place by virtue of other teams losing. But here's kind of what stands out to me in this game. Missouri, they play a lot of zone. I love playing against the zone, and I'm going to pick up on that tendency really early, and I'm going to roll out. I'm just going to wait for Harris to run to a wide open void, and this is something that I will exploit a lot today. Several plays later, I get the same exact read, and this is like an eerily similar play that was just happened, but this time it's Page catching the ball, and I have to say that I'm really impressed with this run after the catch here. He takes it all the way to the end zone, and Page has really stepped up since we started this gauntlet. Once again, I go for 2, and this play kind of reminds me of like that Vince Young final scramble against USC. but I think at this point I've just kind of embraced the pressure of going for 2. But I don't think Missouri's really feeling the pressure at all, and they put together this really methodical drive. It's a lot of smash mouth football, but the end result is them just slicing up my top flight defense, and they're just proving that they're not going to take this game lying down. They're not an easy opponent. Overall, they get like a really good mix of plays. They got quarterback scrambles, passes, runs, and they end up ultimately tossing it to the left corner of the end zone for an easy pitch and catch, and they answer right back. They also follow suit. They go for 2, they convert it with a pass, and things are back to square one. But Breedlove, he's not the nation's best player for no reason. I come out, I'm picking apart the defense, whether it be through my typical passing game, maybe the read option, and after a while my drive stalls and I find myself in a 3rd and goal situation. On a strange decision, Missouri decides they're going to rush 2. That gives Breedlove all day. He can just take like a casual stroll to the right side of the field and just find a wide open guy, and that's another touchdown. We take the lead back. After making a defensive stop, I find myself in another 3rd down, but remember earlier, Missouri loves running the zone. Breedlove makes an easy read to Boyd, and he can just make this read all day. We can do this pickup all day long, but this drive is going to end up stalling, and I'm going to make the safe play. I'm going to take the points, and we're going to go up 17-8. On Missouri's next drive, I'm able to force a 3rd and long. Now they complete the pass, but it's short, but that does give me the golden opportunity I need just to create a lot of distance between the scores. The goal of this drive is to run the clock, and I ultimately want to score, so I put them in like a really bad position, and it starts off great with a 1st down catch from Page. Then I have a 9-yard keeper with Breedlove, but a couple of plays later, I throw an out route to Boyd, and it's a little bit underthrown. He can't quite make it back to the line of scrimmage. He tries, he dives, but I'm in a 4th and 1 situation. And here I think that the upside for going for it is too much. It has too much potential, so I run the read option, I pick it up, and several plays later after running a lot of clock down, Page is able to like barrel his way to the end zone despite having like 5 Missouri dudes around him, and with just 38 seconds left until halftime, I take a 24-8 lead, and I'm in a commanding position in my opinion. So things are going to go downhill really fast in the second half. They open up with a score that's going to make it 24-15, and here I'm going to run a very simple like motion speed option, and I'm going to freeze frame it here, and I want you guys to guess what happens. Do you guys think that Robertson will take it 80 yards for a commanding lead on a crazy run? Well, let me tell you what happens. I end up making a really stupid pitch. Not only is it a stupid pitch, but it's like directly into Missouri's hands. They kind of just rip it out of the air. They take it to the house, and like almost in the blink of an eye, what feels like 15 seconds, the game is already 24-22. But like I've already said several times, the downfall of Missouri is that they play too much zone, and I'm almost immediately able to take the momentum back with a 75-yard lob to Harris. And for me, the game plan now is to get a stop and run the clock, and that's exactly what happens. It's now the 4th quarter. I've been chewing up the clock all day. I've been doing my thing, but I would like to talk real quick about the game management talent tree, why I swapped over and why it's so good. Now, there's a lot of cool perks in there. For me, it's the one that makes all your players hot or very hot in certain scenarios. And you can see here when I'm looking at my players, every player is orange, they're warm, or they're red for hot. And in general, why it's such a good idea to swap over to this side of the talents when you think you have a really good team is that you can just add so much ratings to your team and it can just boost them up really high. But eventually on this drive, I end up milking like 7 minutes off the clock. It's a really long drive. I hit Boyd for another score. That's going to put us up 38-22, and ultimately, that's what the final score is going to end up being. Now, it was a hard-fought game all the way up to the 3rd quarter. I got to give Missouri a little bit of credit, but we are a team on a mission, and that's just another game down, and we have one left to finish the story. So let's take another look at the playoff picture one more time. And with a win over Missouri, I'm in. And ladies and gentlemen, Arkansas State, they've had enough. They are tired of being called an overrated mid-major school that's ranked too high. And they just took Clemson out back and put up 58 points on them to advance to the national championship. That and a win over Ohio State has me a little bit skeptical on just how good they are, but that sets the stage for Colorado versus Arkansas State for the national title. So just a quick preliminary look. It shows that we have the edge in ratings. We all knew that, but they do have the number 2 offense compared to my number 1 offense, so it could be like a little shootout, but there's only one way to really find out. So I'm getting straight into the action, and I'm showing the opening kickoff, and you might be wondering why. It's because I'm going to force a fumble on the very opening play of the game, and I don't think you can draw up a better start than that. And on the very next play, Breedlove, he's back to pass, everyone's covered, and it's time to use that God-given talent to run. He makes a sweet move at the end. We get in, and we're starting this game off hot. I I think Arkansas State, they already have to respond. They do string together a little bit of a drive. They're looking pretty good on a few plays. They're picking up a couple of first downs, but they run into a snag when they cross the 50 and our defense starts to clamp down. On third down, I have everyone covered. I force a coverage sack, and that's going to give me the ball back. Now, you've seen the footage already. You know, normally I don't like to just scramble with the quarterback, but when they got everybody covered, I have no qualms letting Breedlove get loose. And with gains like this, I think it's very clear that Arkansas State, they just don't have the manpower to go toe-to-toe with our offense. And I think a play right here is where you're going to see the biggest talent discrepancy. Now, it's like a routine pass to Page, and I think what this comes down to is that he's just better than their players. He catches the ball, makes a guy miss, then he shakes the second guy, and he's able to take what should have been like a 10-yard pass, an extra 32 yards, and he puts us up 14, and it's not even halfway through the fourth quarter. A couple of drives later, they've been driving, they're running pretty good, and I make the mistake of selling out for the run, and they end up catching me sleeping a little bit in the secondary. They hit a pretty huge pass play, and potentially this could be a ball game. So their drive ends up stalling, and I tackle them for a loss on third down, and Arkansas State knows that they have to score a touchdown here and now, so we have a pretty big fourth down situation coming up. They dial up a play, and they catch it behind the line of scrimmage. It's going to be a few yards short, and their receivers, they have no chance of getting past my guys, and that's going to be a turnover on downs. At this point, I smell blood in the water. I'm going to hot route Boyd on the streak, and I think you all know what's coming. It's time to see what Boyd has done his whole career with that 4.2 speed, and he's one-on-one with their safety, and this game has just been blown wide open, and I think that's the dagger straight to Arkansas State's overachieving heart. And if you think about it, I think any of us would be frustrated if you turned on a game of NCAA and you opened up the game by fumbling the opening kickoff, and then you had like a 93 speed quarterback just zip past you for a 7-0 lead in 30 seconds. And it might sound like I'm being a little bit humble here, but if you look at the numbers for this game, Arkansas State actually had more first downs than I did. And if they didn't take early risk, maybe they didn't fumble, maybe they kicked a field goal instead of going for it on fourth down, it could have been a different game. But I'm not really someone that likes to talk about what ifs, and I think we already know that this one's over. At the end of the day, Arkansas State was who we thought they were, but we did not let them off the hook. I hung up 63 points on them, and that's going to cap off a 16-0 season, and in 5 years, I have restored Colorado to the top of the football world. Now, I know this was an extremely long video. I hope it's less than 2 hours. I think my ideal goal would be to figure out how to make these videos maybe into like, I don't know, 45 minutes or so. So this one's going to be a little bit bloated because I don't know how to do the format just yet. But if you made it this far in the video, you're a real one. I really do appreciate that a lot. Let me know if you did. And I actually have 0 subscribers, so subscribe if you enjoyed the content, and I'll see you guys later. I'm planning on doing like a UAB rebuild on College Football 25, so I'm pretty excited for that. I'll see you then. Bye.